Tonight, I'm not here to tell you to be happy, because if life is hard right now, that advice can feel insulting. I'm here to tell you something stronger. You don't need to feel happy. You need to stay intact. You need to keep your spirit from collapsing. You need to keep your mind from handing the steering wheel to pain. Because the most dangerous part of a hard life isn't the hardship, it's the moment you start abandoning yourself in it. Most people think happiness is a mood, a warm feeling, a lucky day, a perfect condition. But real happiness, the kind that lasts, is built differently. It's built like a shelter, not when the storm is gone, but while the wind is still hitting your face. It's built through one quiet decision: I will not let this day turn me into someone I don't respect. That's the discipline nobody teaches you. Not the discipline of forcing a smile. Not the discipline of pretending you're okay. The discipline of holding yourself when you are not okay. Because, let's be honest, some days you wake up and your chest feels heavy. Your mind feels loud. Your energy feels missing. And the world keeps moving like nothing happened. That's when most people go unconscious. They scroll. They numb. They complain. They retreat. They wait. They say, when life gets better, I'll feel better. But if you wait for life to get better before you learn how to live, you'll be waiting forever. So tonight, we're doing something different. We're not chasing a fake smile. We're building a stronger inner place. A place where you can be tired and still be stable. A place where you can be hurt and still be led by your standards. A place where life can be messy and you don't lose yourself inside it. This audiobook is a training, not for pretending, for self-leadership, for emotional discipline that isn't harsh, for strength that isn't loud, for happiness that isn't dependent on conditions. Because happiness is not a feeling you stumble into. Happiness is what happens when you stop leaving yourself behind. So if you're listening right now and life feels heavy, good. Not because pain is good, but because this is the exact moment where real power is built. Take a slow breath. You don't have to fix your entire life tonight. You only have to do one thing: stay with yourself. And if you can do that, even in the dark, then you're already stronger than most people will ever become. Now, let's begin. Most people spend their entire lives chasing a feeling, a lightness in the chest, a smile that comes easily, a sense that everything is finally okay. They call that happiness. And because they believe happiness is a feeling, they spend years waiting for it to arrive. They wait for better circumstances. They wait for less stress. They wait for the pain to disappear. They wait for life to cooperate. But happiness does not arrive that way. In fact, the moment you believe happiness is something you must feel before you can live well, you place your entire life at the mercy of circumstances you don't control. This is the first truth that changes everything. Happiness is not a feeling. It is a form of inner alignment. Feelings are weather. They change constantly. Alignment is structure. It holds when conditions shift. Most people confuse the two. They think, if I feel good, I'm doing well. And when they feel bad, they assume something is wrong with them. But nothing is wrong. Feeling heavy does not mean you are failing. Feeling tired does not mean you are weak. Feeling empty does not mean you are broken. It means you are human. The problem begins when feelings are allowed to lead. When emotion becomes the decision maker, life becomes unstable. One bad morning can ruin an entire day. One difficult conversation can collapse your mood. One unexpected problem can pull you into mental chaos. That is not sensitivity. That is a lack of inner structure. Happiness, in its real form, is not the absence of negative feelings. It is the ability to remain internally organized when those feelings appear. Think about this carefully. A calm lake is not calm because the wind never blows. It is calm because its depth absorbs the disturbance. Shallow water reacts violently. Deep water moves slowly. Depth is what creates stability. Emotional depth works the same way. People who appear happy during hard seasons are not immune to pain. They are simply deeper. They have learned how to feel discomfort without letting it collapse their identity. This is why chasing happiness as a feeling always fails. Feelings cannot be commanded permanently. They rise and fall based on sleep, hormones, stress, memory, environment. But alignment can be trained. Alignment means this: I may not feel good today, but I know who I am. I may be hurting, but I am still led by my standards. I may be tired, but I will not abandon myself. That is happiness in its most durable form. Most people wait until they feel better to act right. They wait until motivation appears. They wait until energy returns. They wait until the mood improves. But waiting teaches the mind a dangerous lesson. I only show up when conditions are comfortable. Over time, that lesson becomes identity. And identity shapes destiny. Aligned people live differently. They do not ask, "How do I feel right now?" They ask, "What kind of person am I choosing to be today?" This removes emotional negotiation. They don't suppress feelings. They don't deny pain. They simply refuse to let emotion decide their character. This is not harshness. It is self-respect. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can feel low and still remain intact. Not dramatic, not heroic, just steady. That steadiness is peace. And peace is a deeper form of happiness than excitement will ever be. Excitement is loud and short-lived. Peace is quiet and durable. Peace does not depend on applause. It does not vanish when the room goes silent. Peace comes from coherence, from knowing your actions still align with your values, even on bad days. This is why happiness built on circumstances collapses. When happiness depends on results, praise, or comfort, it disappears the moment. Life applies pressure. But happiness built on alignment survives pressure. Pressure doesn't destroy it. Pressure reveals it. Another misunderstanding is the belief that happiness means constant positivity. It does not. Positivity is an attitude. Alignment is a posture. You can be sad and aligned. You can be grieving and aligned. You can be exhausted and aligned. Alignment does not require a smile. It requires honesty. Honesty with yourself about where you are, without letting that truth turn into self-betrayal. This is why forcing happiness backfires. When people force smiles, affirmations, or cheerfulness while internally collapsing, the nervous system feels unsafe. The body knows when you are lying to yourself. That creates internal friction. Friction creates anxiety. Anxiety destroys peace. Real happiness does not come from pretending things are fine. It comes from refusing to let hardship turn you into someone you don't respect. That respect matters more than any emotion, because self-respect stabilizes the mind. When you respect yourself, you don't spiral as easily. You don't overreact. You don't self-abandon. You stay present. And presence is where healing begins. This is why happiness must be redefined before it can be practiced. Not as joy, not as excitement, not as pleasure, but as inner continuity, the ability to stay connected to yourself through changing emotional states. Once you understand this, the pressure lifts. You stop asking, "Why am I not happy?" and start asking, "How can I stay aligned today?" That question is actionable. It leads to small decisions. How you speak to yourself, how you breathe when tension rises, how you respond instead of react, how you keep one promise, even when energy is low. These are not emotional acts. They are structural acts. And structure creates safety. Safety calms the nervous system. A calm nervous system allows genuine happiness to emerge naturally when it's ready. Not forced, not demanded, invited. As this chapter closes, let this settle gently. You do not need to feel happy to live well. You need to remain aligned with yourself when life is hard. That alignment is the foundation. Everything else will be built on top of it. In the next chapter, we will explore why hard days feel so heavy, not from a motivational angle, but from a human one. Some days don't just feel difficult. They feel heavy. Heavy in the chest. Heavy in the body. Heavy in the mind. You wake up already tired. Not because you didn't sleep, but because something inside you never rested. And when that happens, many people assume something is wrong with them. They think, "Why am I like this? Why can't I just push through? Why does everything feel harder than it should?" But hard days don't feel heavy because you're weak. They feel heavy because your system is overloaded. This is something no one explains properly. Your mind and body were not designed to process endless pressure, uncertainty, and emotional noise without pause. When life stacks unresolved stress on top of stress, the weight accumulates, and that weight shows up as heaviness, not sadness, not laziness, heaviness. The first thing to understand is this: a hard day is rarely about that day alone. It's usually carrying the residue of many other days. Unfinished grief, unspoken frustration, delayed rest, ignored boundaries. Each one adds weight, and because the mind is efficient, it compresses that weight into a single sensation. I can't today. Most people fight that sensation. They judge it. They argue with it. They shame themselves for it. That only makes it heavier, because resistance adds pressure. Pressure without release becomes exhaustion. Another reason hard days feel heavy is cognitive load. Your brain is constantly making decisions. What to do, what to avoid, what to worry about, what might go wrong. When too many decisions remain open, the brain never fully relaxes. It stays alert, hyper-vigilant. That vigilance consumes energy even when you're doing nothing. So you feel tired without moving. This is not a motivation problem. It's a bandwidth problem. Your mental bandwidth is saturated. And when bandwidth is full, even simple tasks feel overwhelming. This is why on hard days, small things feel big. A message feels threatening. A task feels impossible. A conversation feels draining. Your system isn't dramatic. It's overloaded. There's also the emotional factor most people ignore. Hard days often surface emotions you've been postponing, not consciously, but emotionally. Grief that never had space. Anger you swallowed. Fear you pushed aside to function. When the nervous system senses a pause, it releases what's been held. That release feels like heaviness, not because you're falling apart, but because something inside you is finally being acknowledged. This is why telling yourself to just be positive on hard days feels cruel. It invalidates the signal. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is information. It's the body saying, something needs attention. The problem is not the pain. The problem is when pain is interpreted as failure. Hard days feel heavy because most people believe they must perform through them the same way they do on good days. That expectation is unrealistic. Energy is not constant. Capacity fluctuates. Alignment does not mean equal output every day. It means honest engagement with the day you're in. Another layer of heaviness comes from identity pressure. On hard days, you're not just dealing with the present moment. You're battling a story that says, if I slow down, I'm falling behind. If I don't perform, I'm failing. If I'm not productive, I'm worthless. That story creates internal violence. It turns rest into guilt. It turns reflection into rumination. It turns being human into a problem to solve. This is why hard days feel suffocating. You're carrying life and judgment at the same time. Aligned people experience hard days too. The difference is how they interpret them. They don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" they ask, "What is this day asking of me?" Sometimes the answer is effort. Sometimes the answer is containment. Containment means doing less, but staying present. It means not collapsing inward. It means not numbing outward. It means remaining intact. Another reason heaviness intensifies at night is fatigue without closure. If the day ends without emotional completion, the mind keeps looping. Thoughts repeat. Scenarios replay. Regret whispers. The body lies down, but the mind stays standing. This creates the sense of weight pressing down as you try to rest. That's not anxiety. That's unresolved activation, which is why this audiobook is structured to slow the system, not to motivate you, but to settle you. Hard days don't require fixing. They require stabilizing. Stabilizing means reminding your system you are safe enough to slow down. You are allowed to feel this without falling apart. You are still in control of how you respond. This is where happiness begins to look very different, not as joy, but as non-collapse. On hard days, happiness means you didn't abandon yourself. You didn't attack yourself. You didn't escape yourself. You stayed. You breathed. You listened. You allowed the weight to exist without letting it define you. That is strength. Quiet strength. And it matters far more than pretending to be okay. As this chapter closes, let this truth land softly. Hard days feel heavy because something inside you needs space, not force. The moment you stop fighting the weight, it begins to loosen. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the silent choice you make every morning, the one that determines whether a hard day breaks you or simply passes through you. Every morning, before the world reaches you, a choice is already waiting. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't feel dramatic, but it decides everything. This choice happens quietly, often before your feet touch the floor, and most people make it unconsciously. They don't choose it. They default into it. The choice is not whether the day will be good or bad. The choice is simpler and far more powerful. Will I lead myself today? Or will I be led by how I feel? That's it. That is the silent fork in the road. Most people wake up and immediately scan their internal state. How do I feel? How tired am I? How heavy does this day already seem? And without realizing it, they let that scan become a verdict. If they feel low, the day becomes defensive. If they feel anxious, the day becomes reactive. If they feel unmotivated, the day becomes postponed. This is not a moral failure. It's a habit. But habits shape identity, and identity shapes life. Leading yourself does not mean ignoring how you feel. It means refusing to let feelings sit in the driver's seat. Feelings are information. They are not instructions. The problem is that most people treat emotions like commands. Tired becomes slow down. Anxious becomes avoid. Unmotivated becomes wait. Over time, the nervous system learns a dangerous pattern. When discomfort appears, I stop. That pattern quietly shrinks life. Leading yourself means breaking that loop gently, not violently. It means acknowledging the feeling without surrendering direction. I feel tired, and I will still choose one aligned action. I feel heavy, and I will still hold my posture. I feel uncertain, and I will still move deliberately. This is not about productivity. It's about authorship. Who is writing the day? Your feelings or your values? Most people believe leadership requires confidence. It doesn't. Leadership requires precedence. Values must come before emotion. That's what leadership is. On hard mornings, leading yourself might look very small. It might be getting out of bed without scrolling. It might be taking 3 slow breaths before reacting. It might be choosing silence instead of self-attack. It might be completing one task with care instead of rushing many. These actions look insignificant. They are not. They are votes. Votes for the kind of person you are becoming. Most people wait for energy before acting. But energy often follows direction, not the other way around. When you move with intention, the nervous system stabilizes. When the nervous system stabilizes, energy becomes available. Waiting teaches the system passivity. Leading teaches it trust. Another misunderstanding is believing that leading yourself means being harsh. It doesn't. Harshness creates rebellion. Gentle authority creates cooperation. You don't need to yell at yourself to lead. You need clarity. Clarity sounds like this: today may be difficult, and I will still remain intact. No drama. No promises. No pressure. Just orientation. This orientation is what gives the day shape. Without it, the day becomes porous. Everything leaks in. Other people's moods, unexpected problems, old memories, unfinished worries. Leading yourself is how you decide what gets access. It's not about control. It's about containment. Contained days feel calmer even when they're full. Uncontained days feel chaotic even when they're empty. This is why mornings matter so much. Not because you must be productive early, but because the first decisions set the nervous system's posture. If the day begins with reaction, the body stays reactive. If the day begins with intention, the body stays oriented. Orientation reduces anxiety. Anxiety comes from not knowing where you stand. Leading yourself answers that question immediately. I know where I stand. I stand with myself. This is where happiness begins to show up again, but quietly. Not as excitement, as stability. Stability allows you to experience moments without being consumed by them. It allows you to have a bad moment without calling it a bad day. It allows you to have a bad day without calling it a bad life. That distinction is everything. Most suffering comes from global conclusions. This always happens. I'm always like this. Nothing ever works. Leading yourself interrupts that thinking. It localizes the moment. This moment is difficult. Today requires care. This does not define me. Localization prevents emotional flooding. Flooding overwhelms the system. An overwhelmed system cannot access joy. But a stabilized system can, even in small doses. Another aspect of the morning choice is pace. Most people rush into the day emotionally. They haven't even arrived in their body yet. Leading yourself means slowing down enough to arrive. Arrival might take 10 seconds, but those 10 seconds change everything. A breath, a stretch, a pause before input. That pause creates a gap, and in that gap, choice exists. Without the gap, reaction is automatic. This is why many people feel like life is happening to them. They never create the gap where response can live. The silent choice each morning is really this: will I create space before I engage the world? Space allows values to surface. Values guide behavior. Behavior builds identity. Identity creates happiness, not the emotional kind, but the grounded kind, the kind that stays even when life doesn't cooperate. As this chapter closes, let this truth settle gently. You don't need to feel strong in the morning. You need to choose who leads your feelings or your values. That choice is quiet, but it shapes the entire day. In the next chapter, we will talk about why chasing happiness often makes it disappear and what to do instead. Most people don't lose happiness because life is hard. They lose it because they keep chasing it. They chase a better mood, a better version of themselves, a future moment where everything finally feels lighter, and without realizing it, the chase becomes the source of exhaustion. Because chasing happiness sends one quiet message to the mind: I am not okay right now. That message erodes peace. It turns the present into something to escape from, instead of something to stand inside. Happiness disappears the moment it becomes a moving target. The more you chase it, the further it feels. This is not because happiness is cruel. It's because happiness was never meant to be hunted. It was meant to be held. Holding yourself is a skill most people were never taught. They were taught to fix, to push, to overcome, to escape discomfort as quickly as possible. But they were never taught how to stay with themselves when nothing feels resolved. So when life gets hard, they panic. They reach outward for distractions, for validation, for answers, for something, anything, to change the way they feel. That outward reaching feels active, but it's actually avoidance. Avoidance of presence, avoidance of stillness, avoidance of the uncomfortable truth that some moments are not meant to be solved, only survived with integrity. Holding yourself means this: you stop trying to feel different and start choosing to remain grounded. You don't demand joy from the moment. You demand loyalty from yourself. I will not abandon myself today. That single decision is stabilizing. It removes urgency. Urgency is what drains energy fastest. When you are always chasing a better feeling, the nervous system stays alert. Alert systems don't rest, and systems that don't rest cannot access genuine happiness. This is why many people feel constantly on edge. Even on good days, they are still chasing. Holding yourself feels very different. It feels slower, quieter, almost unproductive by modern standards. But it is deeply regulating. Holding yourself does not mean indulgence. It does not mean collapsing into emotion or avoiding responsibility. It means offering yourself containment. Containment is the ability to say, "This is uncomfortable, and I can stay." You don't rush to reframe. You don't rush to motivate. You don't rush to numb. You stay present without commentary. That presence communicates safety to the nervous system. Safety allows the body to settle. When the body settles, the mind becomes clearer. Clarity allows better choices. Better choices create alignment. Alignment is the soil where happiness grows naturally. Another misunderstanding is thinking that holding yourself is weakness. It is not. Weakness is needing the moment to be different in order to cope. Strength is remaining coherent when it is not. Holding yourself means you stop fighting your inner state. You stop treating sadness, fatigue, or uncertainty as enemies. You treat them as signals. Signals that something inside you needs gentleness, not force. Most people were trained to be harsh with themselves, to criticize, to pressure, to compare, to push through without listening. That harshness feels productive at first, but over time, it creates internal rebellion. Parts of you shut down. Motivation becomes inconsistent. Joy becomes fragile. Holding yourself repairs that relationship. It rebuilds trust between your actions and your inner world. Trust is essential. You cannot feel happy in a system you don't trust. If every hard moment is met with self-attack, the mind stays defensive. Defensive systems don't open, and happiness requires openness. This is why chasing happiness often leads to anxiety. You are constantly monitoring yourself. Am I happy yet? Why don't I feel better? What's wrong now? Monitoring creates pressure. Pressure suffocates ease. Holding yourself removes the pressure. You are no longer evaluating your emotional state every 5 minutes. You are simply being with it. That being with creates a sense of companionship. You are no longer alone inside your experience. This companionship matters more than positivity. People don't break because life is hard. They break because they feel alone inside it. Holding yourself ends that loneliness. It says, I am here with you. Even now, that sentence, spoken internally, is powerful. It doesn't fix the problem, but it stabilizes the person facing it. And a stabilized person can handle far more than an anxious one. Another important shift happens when you stop chasing happiness. Time slows down. You stop rushing toward the future. You stop bargaining with the present. You begin to experience moments as they are, not as obstacles to overcome. This does not make life easier. It makes life honest. Honesty brings relief. Relief creates space. Space allows small moments of peace to surface unexpectedly, not because you chased them, but because you stopped running. Holding yourself also changes how you respond to pain. Pain stops feeling like proof of failure. It becomes part of the human rhythm. Some days expand. Some days contract. Both are allowed. This permission is not resignation. It is maturity. Emotionally mature people are not always happy. They are stable. Stability allows happiness to appear without being forced. Think about a child learning to calm down. The child does not calm down because someone tells them to be happy. They calm down because they feel held, seen, safe. Adults are no different. The nervous system responds to holding, not commands. This is why harsh self-talk never produces lasting peace. It produces compliance, followed by collapse. Holding produces regulation. Regulation produces resilience. Resilience supports happiness not as a constant state, but as a reliable undercurrent. As this chapter comes to a close, let this truth rest gently. You don't need to chase happiness. You need to become someone who doesn't abandon themselves when happiness is absent. From that place, happiness returns on its own terms. In the next chapter, we'll talk about discipline without harshness, how to build consistency that supports you instead of exhausting you. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline means forcing yourself forward through pain. They think it means being hard, cold, relentless. They think it means punishment for weakness. So they associate discipline with suffering. And because the mind avoids suffering, they resist discipline. This is why so many people fail at consistency. Not because they are lazy, but because their version of discipline feels like self-violence. Real discipline is not punishment. Real discipline is care with structure. It is the act of supporting your future self, not attacking your present one. Punishment says, "You're not good enough yet." Discipline says, "I've got you. Let's do this properly." Punishment creates resistance. Discipline creates cooperation. When you punish yourself for missing a day, slipping up, or feeling tired, your nervous system learns one thing: effort equals pain. So the body avoids effort. But when discipline feels safe, consistent, and fair, the body relaxes into it. Relaxed systems are sustainable systems, and sustainability is the foundation of happiness. Most people try to discipline themselves using shame. They say things like, "You should be better by now." "What's wrong with you? Why can't you stay consistent?" These questions don't motivate. They fracture trust. Trust is essential. You cannot build a disciplined life without trusting yourself. And you cannot trust someone who punishes you when you struggle. Discipline without punishment begins with a shift in posture. Instead of standing over yourself with a whip, you stand beside yourself with direction. You don't ask, "How do I force myself today?" you ask, "What structure would help me show up without burning out?" That question changes everything. Structure is compassionate. Structure removes decision fatigue. Structure protects energy. Structure makes the right action easier than the wrong one. Punishment relies on willpower. Discipline relies on environment. Willpower is unreliable. Environment is quiet and effective. If happiness is built daily, discipline must be gentle enough to repeat. Brutality works once. Consistency works forever. Discipline without punishment also means redefining failure. Failure is not missing a day. Failure is quitting because you missed one. Failure is not feeling low. Failure is believing low days disqualify you. A disciplined person does not collapse when they fall off rhythm. They return. Returning is discipline. Self-punishment says, "You messed up, so you don't deserve to continue." Self-discipline says, "You messed up. Let's reset." Resetting is powerful. Resetting prevents spirals. Most people don't fail because of one bad decision. They fail because they turn one bad decision into an identity. Discipline without punishment interrupts that identity collapse. It treats mistakes as data, not character flaws. Another key shift is understanding that discipline is not emotional. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to feel motivated. But you also don't need to feel threatened. You act calmly, quietly, without drama. Drama is exhausting. Quiet execution is stabilizing. Think of discipline like brushing your teeth. You don't motivate yourself. You don't punish yourself if you miss one night. You simply resume. That neutrality is powerful. Happiness thrives in neutral systems. Emotionally charged systems create highs and crashes. Discipline without punishment flattens the emotional spikes. It creates predictability. Predictability calms the nervous system. A calm nervous system allows joy to surface naturally. This is why many disciplined people seem calm, not intense. Their discipline is not loud. It's consistent. It doesn't shout. It shows up. Another reason punishment fails is because it links self-worth to performance. That is dangerous. When your worth rises and falls with productivity, happiness becomes unstable. Discipline without punishment separates identity from output. You are not good because you performed well. You are not bad because you struggled. You are steady. Steadiness is freedom. From steadiness, action flows more easily. You stop needing emotional leverage to move. You move because it's time to move. That simplicity is grounding. One practical way to practice discipline without punishment is setting minimum standards instead of maximum expectations. Instead of demanding excellence every day, you define a non-negotiable minimum, something small, something doable even on bad days. That minimum keeps the habit alive. Life is not built on peak days. It's built on average ones. Minimum standards protect momentum. Momentum protects confidence. Confidence supports happiness. Another aspect is recovery. Punishment ignores recovery. Discipline respects it. Rest is not failure. Rest is maintenance. Burned out people are not undisciplined. They are undersupported. Discipline without punishment includes rest as part of the plan, not as a guilty indulgence. Rest chosen intentionally strengthens discipline. Rest taken out of collapse weakens it. There is a difference. When you allow yourself to rest without shame, your system learns balance. Balance prevents resentment. Resentment destroys consistency. Discipline without punishment also changes self-talk. The inner voice becomes steady, not aggressive. It sounds like, do what you can today. Stay in rhythm. Don't disappear on yourself. This voice builds reliability. Reliability builds self-respect. Self-respect is deeply connected to happiness. You feel lighter when you trust yourself. You feel safer when you know you won't abandon your standards or your well-being. That safety is subtle, but powerful. Over time, discipline without punishment becomes identity. You no longer think of yourself as someone who has to push. You see yourself as someone who shows up. Showing up calmly is strength. Showing up without drama is mastery. As this chapter closes, remember this: discipline is not about breaking yourself into shape. It's about building a structure strong enough to hold you, especially on hard days. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to stay emotionally steady when motivation disappears and why steadiness matters more than intensity. There is a lie many people believe about happiness, that if you are not smiling, you are failing. That if you are tired, heavy, quiet, or emotionally flat, you are doing something wrong. That belief creates pressure, and pressure destroys happiness faster than pain ever could. Here is the truth most people are afraid to say: you do not need to smile to be strong. You do not need to feel good to be okay. You do not need to look positive to be moving forward. There are seasons where smiling is not required. Only steadiness is. Happiness is not the absence of heaviness. It is the ability to carry heaviness without collapsing. Most people confuse happiness with performance. They perform joy for others. They perform optimism for the world. They force expressions their nervous system does not feel. That performance drains them. And when they finally break, They think happiness has failed them. But happiness was never meant to be loud. It was meant to be stable. There are days when life asks nothing heroic from you. It does not ask you to inspire. It does not ask you to motivate. It does not ask you to smile. It asks only one thing: do not give up. That is enough. Not quitting is an act of strength. Resting without abandoning yourself is discipline. Continuing without enthusiasm is maturity. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be quiet. You are allowed to feel flat. What you are not allowed to do if you want real happiness is disappear from your own life. There is a difference between rest and retreat. Rest histories. Retreat erodes. When smiling is not required, grounding is. Grounding means staying present in your body, breathing, moving slowly, doing the next small, necessary thing, not everything, just the next thing. Many people quit happiness because they believe it requires constant emotional output. They believe happiness must look a certain way: bright, energetic, confident, social. But the most durable form of happiness looks different. It looks like calm breathing in a difficult room. It looks like showing up without excitement. It looks like getting through the day without self-betrayal. This chapter is about permission. Permission to stop pretending. Permission to stop forcing joy. Permission to stop exhausting yourself, trying to look okay. You don't need to smile. You just need to not give up on yourself. There is strength in neutrality. Neutrality is not numbness. It is balance. It is the emotional middle ground where you are not fighting yourself. Fighting yourself creates internal war. Internal war steals peace. Peace is the soil where happiness grows. When life is hard, smiling can feel dishonest. And dishonesty, especially toward yourself, creates tension. That tension accumulates. Eventually, it breaks you. This is why forced positivity is dangerous. It teaches you to ignore your signals. Fatigue is a signal. Heaviness is a signal. Silence is a signal. Signals are not enemies. They are information. This chapter is not telling you to indulge pain. It is telling you not to deny reality. Real happiness does not require denial. It requires honesty plus stability. You can say, "Today is heavy," and still be okay. You can say, "I am not happy today," and still be moving toward happiness. You can say, "I am tired," without making it a verdict on your life. The problem begins when tired becomes hopeless. Hopelessness is not caused by fatigue. It is caused by self-abandonment. And self-abandonment often starts when you believe you must always appear fine. Let's make something very clear. You are allowed to feel low. You are not allowed to quit. That line matters, because it removes shame. Shame is what turns a bad day into a bad life. When you shame yourself for being human, you drain the very energy you need to recover. Recovery requires kindness without indulgence. You don't collapse, but you don't whip yourself either. You stay. Staying is the quiet discipline nobody talks about. Staying with your routine, even lightly. Staying with your values, even softly. Staying with your breath, even when your mind wanders. This is where real happiness is trained, not in excitement, in endurance. When smiling is not required, consistency becomes sacred. Consistency without emotion is powerful. It builds trust, and trust creates safety. Safety allows your nervous system to relax. A relaxed nervous system experiences more natural happiness. Not dramatic happiness, sustainable happiness. Many people chase joy while exhausting their nervous system. They don't realize happiness cannot exist in a state of constant tension. This chapter gives you a different standard, a quieter one, a stronger one. You don't measure your life by how good you feel today. You measure it by whether you stayed aligned with yourself. Did you abandon yourself today, or did you remain even imperfectly present? If you remained, you are winning, even if no one sees it, even if you don't feel it yet. This is the kind of happiness that survives storms, not because it ignores pain, but because it does not panic around it. There is deep relief in knowing you don't have to perform joy. You can be serious. You can be quiet. You can be slow, and still be building a good life. As this chapter closes, remember this: you don't need to smile to move forward. You don't need to feel inspired to continue. You only need to not abandon yourself. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into emotional self-leadership, how to let emotions speak without letting them decide. Most people believe emotions are commands. If they feel tired, they stop. If they feel sad, they withdraw. If they feel unmotivated, they wait. That belief quietly ruins lives, because emotions were never meant to lead. They were meant to inform. Emotional self-leadership begins with one fundamental shift. Your feelings are signals, not orders. A signal tells you what is happening inside. An order tells you what to do next. Confusing the two is where most people lose control. Feeling low does not mean you should quit. Feeling anxious does not mean you should hide. Feeling unmotivated does not mean you should pause your life. It only means your inner system is communicating. A strong person does not silence emotions. A disciplined person does not obey them blindly. A self-led person listens, then decides. This chapter is not about suppressing emotion. Suppression creates pressure. Pressure eventually explodes. This chapter is about containment. Containment means allowing emotion to exist without letting it drive the vehicle. Think of yourself as the driver. Emotions are weather. Rain does not cancel the journey. Fog does not change the destination. Wind does not choose the direction. You slow down. You stay alert. You keep your hands on the wheel. That is emotional leadership. Most people were never taught this. They were taught either to drown in emotion or to pretend emotion doesn't exist. Both extremes are dangerous. If emotion leads, your life becomes unstable. If emotion is denied, your body keeps the score. Leadership lives in the middle. You don't fight emotion. You don't negotiate with it. You acknowledge it and continue. This is why emotional self-leadership is quiet. It doesn't look dramatic. It looks like this: you feel heavy, but you still make your bed. You feel irritated, but you speak carefully. You feel discouraged, but you keep your routine intact. No applause. No inspiration quote, just authority over yourself. This is where happiness stops being fragile. Because fragile happiness depends on mood. Strong happiness depends on direction. Many people think emotional leadership means feeling better. That's incorrect. It means not letting emotions decide behavior. You don't need to feel confident to act with confidence. You don't need to feel calm to behave calmly. You don't need to feel hopeful to move forward. Behavior shapes emotion far more reliably than emotion shapes behavior. This is uncomfortable to hear, because it removes excuses, but it also returns power. When you stop waiting for emotion to change, your life starts moving again. Emotional self-leadership requires one rule: no emotion gets a veto. Sadness can speak, but it cannot cancel your values. Fear can speak, but it cannot override your principles. Fatigue can speak, but it cannot erase your identity. You listen. You thank the signal. Then you act based on who you chose to be. This is not coldness. This is maturity. Children act from emotion. Leaders act from alignment. Alignment is who you decided to be when you were calm and clear. That decision must be respected even when your nervous system protests. This is why discipline creates peace. Because discipline reduces inner conflict. When your actions contradict your values, your emotions become chaotic. When your actions align with your values, emotions settle even if they don't disappear. You don't need to fix your feelings. You need to outlast their intensity. Emotions rise. Emotions peak. Emotions fall. But only if you don't feed them with panic. Panic comes from believing the emotion defines reality. It does not. It defines a moment. This chapter teaches you one powerful distinction. Feeling something is not the same as becoming it. You can feel hopeless without becoming hopeless. You can feel angry without becoming destructive. You can feel empty without becoming lost. Self-leadership is the space between feeling and identity. That space is freedom. Many people collapse because they merge with emotion. They say, "I am anxious," instead of "I feel anxiety." Language matters. Identity solidifies experience. Temporary states become permanent labels. This chapter invites you to loosen that grip. You are not your emotion. You are the one noticing it. That awareness alone weakens its control. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to stop obeying temporary states. Emotional leadership also means pacing, not forcing, not rushing recovery. You don't need to feel better immediately. You need to remain steady. Steadiness beats positivity. Steadiness builds trust within yourself. When you trust yourself, anxiety lowers. When anxiety lowers, happiness returns naturally. This is why emotional leadership is essential for long-term happiness. Without it, happiness becomes dependent on conditions. With it, happiness becomes rooted in character. And character does not fluctuate hourly. As this chapter closes, remember this: you don't need to control your emotions. You only need to not let them control you. In the next chapter, we'll move into gratitude without lying to yourself. How to use gratitude as grounding, not denial. Most people misunderstand gratitude. They think gratitude means pretending everything is fine. They think it means forcing a smile while something inside hurts. They think it means saying, "I'm thankful," when they actually feel exhausted, disappointed, or lost. That is not gratitude. That is emotional dishonesty, and your nervous system knows the difference. Real gratitude does not ask you to deny pain. It asks you to stand somewhere solid while the pain exists. Gratitude is not saying, "Everything is good." Gratitude is saying, "Something here is still holding me." That distinction changes everything. Because when gratitude becomes fake, your mind resists it. When gratitude becomes honest, your body relaxes into it. This chapter is about gratitude that stabilizes you, not gratitude that gaslights you. You do not need to be grateful for the pain. You only need to be grateful within the moment. There is always a foothold, even in loss, even in confusion, even in exhaustion. Gratitude is not about appreciation. It is about orientation. When life becomes overwhelming, your mind starts spinning. Thoughts race. Emotions pile up. Everything feels uncertain. Gratitude interrupts that spin, not by lying, by grounding. Think of gratitude like placing your hand on a wall when the room feels like it's moving. The wall doesn't fix the chaos, but it keeps you upright. That is what honest gratitude does. It gives you something to lean on. Maybe it's your breath. Maybe it's the fact that you survived yesterday. Maybe it's the simple truth that you are still here. Not everything. Just one thing. Gratitude is not abundance thinking. It is stability thinking. When your mind is unstable, telling yourself to be positive creates resistance. But noticing one true anchor creates calm. That anchor might be small, and that's enough. Gratitude does not need to be big to be effective. It needs to be real. This is why gratitude works so well before sleep. At night, your mind reviews the day. If you let it spiral unchecked, it will replay mistakes, regrets, fears. Gratitude gives your mind a safe place to land. Not a fantasy, a fact. Something like, "I didn't give up today. I showed restraint. I handled that better than before. I'm still learning. I'm still breathing." These statements do not deny pain. They coexist with it. And coexistence is healing. Gratitude without honesty becomes pressure. Honest gratitude becomes permission. Permission to rest. Permission to pause. Permission to not solve everything tonight. You don't need to feel happy. You need to feel grounded. And grounding comes from truth. Many people resist gratitude because they feel it minimizes their struggle. It doesn't. It contextualizes it. Pain tells you what hurts. Gratitude reminds you what still works. Both can exist at the same time. You are not betraying your pain by being grateful. You are preventing it from swallowing your entire identity. This chapter invites you to stop performing gratitude. No lists to impress. No forced optimism. No comparison to others. Just one honest point of support. Gratitude is not a performance for the universe. It is a conversation with your nervous system. It says, "You're not unsafe. You're tired, but you're not broken. You're hurting, but you're still standing. That message calms the body. And a calm body allows happiness to return quietly, not explosively. Quiet happiness lasts longer. This form of gratitude also builds trust with yourself. When you stop lying to yourself emotionally, your inner resistance lowers. You stop fighting your own experience. That reduces suffering more than positivity ever could. Gratitude does not erase the dark. It gives you a lantern. You still walk the path, but you can see the next step, and that is enough. As this chapter closes, remember this line: gratitude is not about convincing yourself life is good. It's about reminding yourself you are not lost. In the next chapter, we'll explore the quiet form of happiness, the kind that doesn't need excitement, approval, or constant stimulation. Most people are chasing the loud version of happiness, the exciting kind, the obvious kind, the kind that shows up in photos, celebrations, big moments, and sudden highs. They think happiness must be intense to be real, but intensity is unstable. What rises fast also falls fast. The quiet form of happiness is different. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush in. It doesn't need witnesses. It settles. Quiet happiness is not an emotion spike. It is a state of internal steadiness. You don't wake up euphoric. You wake up grounded. You don't feel ecstatic. You feel okay being alive. And that is far more powerful than people realize. Loud happiness depends on stimulation, noise, praise, change, achievement. Quiet happiness depends on alignment. When your inner world and your actions stop fighting each other, peace appears quietly. Not dramatic, reliable. This chapter is about recognizing that kind of happiness and stopping the chase for something louder, because the chase itself is often the source of dissatisfaction. When you expect happiness to feel exciting, you miss it when it feels calm. When you expect happiness to be obvious, you overlook it when it's subtle. Quiet happiness feels like no urge to escape the moment, no need to impress anyone, no internal pressure to perform, no panic about tomorrow. It feels ordinary. And that's why most people ignore it. They think something is missing. But what's missing is noise. Quiet happiness doesn't require constant stimulation. It shows up when your nervous system finally feels safe. Safe from comparison. Safe from urgency. Safe from emotional chaos. This is why quiet happiness is sustainable. It does not need novelty to survive. It lives in routines, in familiar mornings, in predictable evenings, in knowing who you are when no one is watching. Loud happiness burns energy. Quiet happiness conserves it. That conservation is not boredom. It's stability. People confuse calm with emptiness. But calm is full of presence, full of clarity, full of self-respect. When you stop needing happiness to entertain you, it begins to support you. This is especially important during hard seasons. When life is heavy, loud happiness feels fake. Quiet happiness feels honest. It sounds like I'm not okay, but I'm not falling apart. I'm tired, but I'm still here. I don't have answers, but I trust myself to handle what comes. That trust is happiness, not joy, not excitement. Trust. Trust in yourself creates peace. Peace creates quiet happiness. Quiet happiness does not fluctuate wildly. It doesn't disappear because someone disappointed you. It doesn't collapse because a plan changed. It doesn't shatter because progress is slow. It remains because it's not built on outcomes. It's built on identity. When you become someone you respect, happiness becomes background music. You don't hear it constantly, but you notice when it's gone. This chapter invites you to stop demanding happiness to prove itself. It doesn't owe you fireworks. It owes you stability, and stability feels subtle. That subtlety is a feature, not a flaw. The loud world trains you to seek more. More stimulation, more excitement, more validation. Quiet happiness asks you to feel enough. Enough presence, enough clarity, enough self-trust. It does not mean settling. It means standing. Standing firmly in who you are, even while life continues to challenge you. Quiet happiness also changes how you relate to pain. Pain doesn't disappear, but it no longer defines your entire experience. It becomes one part of a wider emotional landscape. You can hurt and still feel steady. You can struggle and still feel grounded. That duality is maturity. This is why quiet happiness is often invisible from the outside. Others might think you're boring. Others might think you're detached. Others might think you've lost ambition. But inside, something has clicked. You no longer need emotional highs to feel alive. You no longer need constant change to feel progress. You no longer need external validation to feel okay. That internal quiet is not weakness. It is strength that doesn't need noise. As this chapter closes, remember this: happiness does not need to be loud to be real. The quiet form is often the one that lasts. In the final chapter, we'll close the loop with "You don't need a better life. You need a steadier you," where happiness stops being a reaction and becomes a foundation. Most people believe their problem is life. If life were easier, if circumstances were kinder, if people were more supportive, if timing were better, then they would be happy. That belief keeps them trapped, because life will never stop changing. Circumstances will never stay calm long enough. People will never behave consistently enough. Timing will never be perfect. So if your happiness depends on life becoming better, it will always feel delayed. This chapter ends the search. You don't need a better life. You need a steadier you. A steadier you is someone whose inner posture does not collapse every time the external world shifts. Someone whose emotional center holds even when outcomes are uncertain. Someone who doesn't need life to cooperate in order to remain grounded. Steadiness is not excitement. Steadiness is not optimism. Steadiness is self-trust. When you trust yourself, life no longer feels like a threat. It feels like terrain, sometimes rough, sometimes smooth, but always navigable. Most people are exhausted, not because life is hard, but because their inner world is unstable. Their mood rises and falls with messages. News, opinions, delays, praise, and rejection. That instability drains energy. A steadier you conserves energy, not by avoiding life, by anchoring identity. This chapter is about identity-based happiness, not happiness that reacts, happiness that rests. When you know who you are, you don't need every day to feel good. You just need to feel aligned. Alignment is quieter than pleasure, but far more durable. A steadier you does not panic during low days. Low days still exist, but they don't feel like failure. They feel like weather, temporary. A steadier you does not over-celebrate high days either. Success is appreciated, but not worshipped, because identity is no longer outsourced to results. This is the core shift. When happiness is outcome-based, you live on emotional cliffs. When happiness is identity-based, you live on solid ground. Identity-based happiness sounds like I'm the kind of person who shows up. I'm the kind of person who stays steady. I'm the kind of person who doesn't abandon myself. Those statements do not depend on circumstances. They depend on commitment. This is why steadiness must be practiced. Not once, repeatedly. You don't become steady by accident. You become steady by choosing the same principles even when emotions fluctuate. A steadier you does not require constant self-improvement. It requires self-consistency. Doing what you said you would do. Resting when rest is needed without collapsing into avoidance. Moving forward without forcing optimism. Steadiness allows sadness without spiraling. Steadiness allows joy without attachment. Steadiness allows uncertainty without panic. That is real freedom, not control over life. Control over response. This chapter closes the loop of the entire audiobook. Happiness is not something you chase. It's something that appears when inner resistance drops. Inner resistance drops when you stop fighting your own experience and start leading yourself through it. A steadier you does not need life to slow down. A steadier you slows internally. That internal slowing creates clarity. Clarity creates peace. Peace creates happiness quietly. Not every day feels meaningful. Not every moment feels light. But your foundation stays intact. That foundation is built from emotional self-leadership, honest gratitude, quiet happiness, identity-based standards together. They create stability, and stability is the soil where happiness grows naturally. As this chapter ends, hold this sentence gently. You don't need life to become easier. You need yourself to become steadier. When you become steadier, life no longer decides your emotional state. You do. And that is where real happiness begins. As this audiobook comes to a close, there's nothing you need to fix tonight. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to feel inspired. You don't need to feel different right now. Let the words settle. Happiness is not something you chase before sleep. It's something that grows when you stop fighting the day. If today was heavy, let it be heavy. If today felt incomplete, let it rest. You don't have to solve your life in one evening. What matters is this: you stayed present. You listened. You chose to slow down instead of escaping. That choice already matters. This audiobook wasn't meant to hype you up. It was meant to steady you. So tonight, allow yourself to rest without judging the progress, without replaying mistakes, without planning tomorrow in your head. Your nervous system learns through repetition, not force. Each night you return to calm. You teach your body that it's safe again. And when safety returns, clarity follows naturally. If this message resonated with you, you don't need to comment or explain why. Just return when you need grounding. Return when your mind feels loud. Return when life feels heavier than usual. For those who want to continue this journey, there are more long-form audiobooks on this channel designed for deep listening, emotional stability, and mental clarity. Simply let the next one play when you're ready. And before you sleep, remember this: you don't have to become someone else to be happy. You only have to stay connected to yourself. Good night.